Yeah, that's you. Are you going to freestyle for us? I thought maybe you could give a little bit of
Got some bars for you. Yeah.
Hey, welcome to Old School, New School Football. That beautiful man, the young man across from me, is Jude Allume. He's here every week, as am I. I'm Wil Masisak, the old fart, who's also here in my old man sweater today. Because I thought if you're going to be old school, you got to have a house sweater and talk like this. Listen, you kids, which I will at some point during the show. Jude.
He was very excited about his old man sweater.
I don't know about excited, but yeah.
Just wanted to put that out there. He's very excited about his
in
old
the
man
wintertime,
sweater.
it's kind of my binky, you got to have a binky. Very
it's
important.
like your initiation into the club or something.
Yeah, something like that. So, Jude, wow, what a last weekend of the NFL. If their goal in adding the extra week and the extra playoff spot was to keep the excitement going until the last week, I'd have to say it actually exceeded the expectations. It felt like it feels like they got more than they bargained for, since the end of the last weekend was down to the actually 2 seconds left in the season, or with the clock running out. They got a lot of drama in the last week, Jude. Let's start with, how do we explain the Indianapolis Colts losing to the Jacksonville Jaguars? I told you they haven't won in Jacksonville since 2014. You didn't want to hear me, but your Colts, who I think you thought might have a chance to win their division.
No, don't call them my Colts. Don't call them my Colts.
Well, 5-6 weeks ago, you were like, they're going to win the division over Tennessee.
I did say that, yes. And then
how do you explain?
And then I remembered they've got this guy named Carson Wentz who showed who he truly is, and that's not franchise quarterback. Call it whatever you want, just as long as it's not franchise quarterback. I think it mostly has to do with you and you putting whatever you need to put out there to get your Steelers into the playoffs. You put it into existence. You said, you know what? The Jaguars can win this game. Obviously, anybody who's watched any football this year would say, this guy is off his knocker. Like, the Colts fighting for a playoff spot against the Jaguars, the worst team in the league, not looking at records, but as far as talent and what they put on the field, aside from a surprise performance and a win against the Buffalo Bills, this is the worst team in the league. No way that this Colts team fighting for a playoff spot, I can't put enough emphasis on that point, fighting for a playoff spot. As simple as you win and you're in. No way they're going to lay an egg in this game against the worst team in the league. And they did it.
Guess
it was
what, Jude?
Unbelievable. I was so shocked. Like, I could not believe my eyes. I
wasn't surprised that Jacksonville got off to an early lead, because that's kind of the theme of these four teams trying to, win a game and steal, knock somebody out of the playoffs or whatever. But the fact that it got worse and worse and worse. Carson Wentz appeared to, when he felt more pressure to try to make a play, started making mistakes left and right, which was, really bad for the outcome. But in general, Jude, these late season games with bad teams, they have different motivations than other teams do. And sometimes those games are really important to them. Like I said last week, you're fighting for your ability to stay in the league next year, to keep your job. Sometimes that's a pretty big motivator. For the Colts, maybe they just thought they could show up and win the game and be a little bit flat against a team that's really motivated and on a good day. The margin is very thin. Yeah, sorry, the margin between even good teams and bad teams in the NFL is very thin.
Yes, but no. I mean,
hey, did Detroit beat the Green Bay Packers? Were they still ahead of them when Green Bay had all their starters in the game? Yes, they were.
They were, but that's like with, just like you said, with the Colts. It's like, yeah, they got off to an early lead, but you expected that eventually the Colts would, figure it out, take the lead, win the game. I have no doubt if Aaron Rodgers stays in that game, they're coming back and they're beating the Packers. They almost did it with Jordan Love. So I have no doubt with Aaron Rodgers, it's a much different ball game. But I mean, it was much different motivation for the Packers. Like, there was no motivation. They had nothing to gain from another win, aside from it being another win, better the, record at the end of the season. But the Colts, I mean, this isn't a game where you could afford to come out flat, where you could say, we just need to show up to win. You need to say, listen, this is a team that's beat us before, and we are fighting to make the playoffs. We think we are good enough to win it all. At least I think that they thought they were good enough to win it all.
Yeah.
For them to show up like that is unexcusable. You have a good coach. You have good players littered throughout your roster. You're just simply better. They don't even have a head coach right now. They've got an interim head coach. And you know what? Kudos to him for getting his guys to pull together to pull off a win like that. But this is more an indictment on the Indianapolis Colts than it is a good thing for the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is just unbelievable. And honestly, he's lucky that, he's got enough rapport. He's built enough credit with himself, because this is the kind of thing that, coaches get fired for. I mean, look at Brian Flores. This team didn't make the playoffs, but he had the same record and he got fired. So it's not completely unheard of to say that, Frank Reich could be shown the door as a result of this.
I mean, I
to the Jaguars.
I mean, the thing is, we can talk about the Miami thing for a second. Brian Flores getting fired is the most ridiculous firing in several years. It'd be hard for me to remember the last time a coach got fired and it was more ridiculous. There's just, some behind the scenes intrigue, and like whoever was loyal to Tua, that's the guy that, was going to stay. And the guy who wasn't sounds like the guy who had to get out. And that is not necessarily the best decision for your franchise. In fact, it seems like a decision that sets your franchise back quite a bit to fire a guy like that. I imagine he gets one of the first hires. He gets his choice probably of most of the jobs available.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it doesn't help that the team started 1-7. It doesn't help that they haven't made the playoffs. But I absolutely agree with you. I was shocked by it. I saw it come across my phone, and I literally just dropped my jaw. Like, why would they do such a thing? I get it. The record hasn't been the greatest, but you can maybe you didn't see the kind of improvements you wanted to see in Tua, but the improvements are there. No, he's not a guy that's gonna completely take over a game, at least not yet. But he is now one of the more accurate quarterbacks in the league. Last year, he just simply looked like he didn't belong. Now you can believe that he's a starting NFL quarterback. It's not like they made a huge mistake or anything like that. The development just wasn't there. What I'm seeing is that, there was a lot of guys in the building that didn't really like him. And, just as far as like in the workplace, being chummy with everybody, he wasn't that kind of guy. Honestly, for my head coach, I don't care as long as you're winning games. And at the end of the day, last 2 years, he was winning games, winning record. One of the better defenses in the NFL. Maybe they're not top 10, but they have top 10 metrics as far as sacks, as far as turnovers, as far as points allowed. So I just was shocked by it. But at the end of the day, he'll go somewhere, hopefully, and find success, because I do think he's one of the better coaches right now. And you're absolutely right. He will have his pick of the litter as far as teams looking for a new head coach in this next round of hiring. Yeah,
it's Tua Tagovailoa. Like, to me, he doesn't have quite the running ability, but Marcus Mariota is the guy that it reminds me of a little bit. He's not going to be the worst quarterback in the league. I'm not sure he's also going to be he's also not going to be the guy who wins a lot of big games for you. I just feel like at this level, maybe in college, he was a guy that could do that with a great defense, whatever. But even with their, really strong defense, he just lacked sometimes the ability to push the ball downfield and make plays when you need him to. And that's a limitation on a quarterback that is death for a franchise. That's that thing. It gets you like, he's too good to get rid of, net probably. But if you're Brian Flores, maybe you just felt, look, better to cut bait early with this guy and try to make a move to make us contenders while we have this defense. But yeah, it's hard to win that argument with your owner who just spent, one of the top picks in the draft for the guy and could have had, maybe another quarterback at that spot who was better. And you got to eat all that crow and all that, draft expenditure just to get out. Hard to do for anybody. Maybe let's go back to the playoffs for a second, or the playoff implications of week 18. Before we get to the last bit of funny business in the AFC, let's talk for a second about the NFC. The matchups there with the Rams and with Cardinals and 49ers, that, sort of sorting itself out. Here's the context I'm going to ask you to, give me your thoughts about. how does what happened in the last week or two of the season affect your opinion about who's going to move on in the NFC playoffs? What did you see the last few weeks there? What do you read into it?
I mean, you look at the Rams, and it's just like they had a winning streak. I think before this last week, they had a winning streak of, I think, maybe 5 games. And you're like, maybe they're getting hot. But really, I'm looking at that winning streak, and I'm like, they get the ultimate result, which is the W, but they just haven't looked that good, not offensively, not defensively. And even, the last couple of weeks, I've been saying Matthew Stafford just doesn't look like the possible MVP candidate from, the first 8 games of the year. And that showed itself again in this past game, like just another game with multiple interceptions. And it's like, what's missing? And you can't quite put a finger on it. The defense, which at times looked dominating, just wasn't that. You knew the 49ers were going to run the ball, and yet you still could not stop them. So for me, it's like I really did have the Rams penciled in as serious contenders, and now it's like I'm not even sure if they'll get out of the first round. Yes, they get a home game because Arizona Cardinals, another team that just finds themselves to be in a precarious situation right now. Nonetheless, I mean, you get the home game because of that, because they lost, not because you went out and got it. Yeah. So it's just hard for me to say either one of these guys are contenders. Maybe the Cardinals, maybe it really is DeAndre Hopkins missing is the key factor, that caused the slide towards the last 5 games of the season. Maybe he comes back and all of a sudden they look every bit as good as the team that was the last to, finally get a loss and in the league this season. But, those are 2 teams that I'm just looking at. I'm just like, which one of you, if not both of you, are going to be the team that, allows whatever other team to get upset? Because, there are a lot of other teams who fought to get into that wild card spot that just looked like they wanted more. The 49ers, who beat the Rams, being one of those teams where it's like, maybe I would have said, I'm not really worried about them. But now I see, they play really solid defense. They run the ball really well. Obviously, that's been the case with them for years, just finding creative ways to run that ball, regardless who's running the ball, and just require the bare minimum out of Jimmy Garoppolo. And, it's a winning formula for them, and that's something that they can just continue to do.
Yeah, I feel it's like it's something about this long season. It just feels like the teams that play better later in the season are so much of an advantage going into the playoffs. Yeah, sure. The teams that have a lot of talent, like the Rams or the Chiefs or Tampa Bay, that talent might rise to the top when they get in the postseason. But there's something to be said for the momentum of what's going on. And Arizona scares me. Yes, they're going to get J.J. Watt back for whatever it's worth. Yes, I guess they're going to get DeAndre Hopkins back at some point. But boy, that seems like such a long time ago. Their undefeated streak to start the season seems like last year. So I'm not sure they're that team anymore. It's funny, like they could have played the Super Bowl in October. I think the Cardinals would have been one of the favorites, right? So sure. Kind of like that. And I was impressed also with what San Francisco did. I like you compare San Francisco and the Rams. The Rams have a guy at each level of their defense. Basically, they have a pass rusher, they have a defensive lineman, they have a defensive back, who are all exceptional players. Like especially right now, Jalen Ramsey is excellent at what they're asking him to do, and Aaron Donald is Aaron Donald, right? And then Von Miller, it's like Von Miller is like the afterthought to all that stuff. They have Cooper Kupp, who's arguably having the best season for any position player. And you have Matthew Stafford, who's supposed to be, at least a top 10 quarterback in the league, and McVay, who's considered to be one of the top coaches in the league. Somehow they feel less than the sum of their parts. And then you go over to San Francisco, and it's like, yeah, they got some good players, and they got maybe George Kittle, and the coach is known for being a good coach. But it feels like the 49ers are out kicking their coverage, and the Rams are not living up to their expectations. And I don't know how you. Like, I feel like they both have a lot of good pieces. So what's the difference? I can't say the 49ers quarterback is clearly better, and it's a quarterback league. I can't say their coach is clearly better, but something's definitely better about how the 49ers get stuff out of their talent than the Rams.
I could agree with that. Yeah. The Rams have the better record, but it's like at this point right now, I feel like if you're asking people who's the better team, it's not going to be clearly the Rams are the better team. In fact, I would even argue to say a lot of people, probably more people, would say the 49ers are the better team right now. And they'd be absolutely right. These are the guys who clawed and fought their way into the playoffs and simply looked like they wanted it more. Maybe it's a case of the Rams just had it in coasting into the playoffs right now. And I don't know if it's one of those things where you can just flip the switch and say, you know what, all right, let's turn it on, get all the cylinders rolling. But, it's one of those things where you just expect, that's the NFL in general, but more so than ever this season in particular, you just expect one thing and you get another. I wouldn't be shocked if, we're sitting here and we're saying, we're expecting the Rams to possibly get upset and they just come out and they dominate in this first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think these early round games are sometimes a bit outliers compared to as it gets further along and the teams get better. Yeah. So if you got a good matchup in the first round, then it's a real possibility that the Rams, we'll get to the matchups in a second, but I'm saying there are teams that were really good offensive teams with some a lot of stars, and they can survive that first round hit. Just living on their sort of energy and reputation, but later as the schedule gets tougher, you see their flaws come to the surface more, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think I'm not sure what the answer to my question that I posed to you is what makes the difference between those two teams, but in a way, I feel it's a little bit like, to put it in the most cliche, simplest way possible, that the 49ers are sort of more built for playoff football than the Rams are. The Rams are built for regular season football to put up a lot of stats and look pretty in September. But I'm not sure they're a December and January football team. We'll find out. But Matthew Stafford has never seemed like a guy who was really killing it in the stretch run and doing everything he could to win games. He just feels like a, up and down guy. When he's on it, he really looks great. And when he's not on it, and your team is dependent upon that style of play to win, then I think that's where the trouble starts. And maybe that's where they're at. I think you can turn it on in the postseason. If you're Tom Brady with the Patriots and every year you turn it on in the postseason. And so that gear is there. You're just trying to get to the postseason. But yeah, I don't know if the Rams are in a position where they're really ready to just turn it back on if they.
No, definitely not. They haven't earned that right. They don't have the player, the quarterback, who could say, I've earned that right, where I can, kind of coast and cruise, take a game off here and there. They don't have that. Like Matthew Stafford, he is a great quarterback. He's a great regular season quarterback. His playoff, career numbers aren't that great. The record definitely isn't that great. And he just hasn't been there enough times to establish himself as a guy who makes it there every year and performs. So, they don't have that much, credit to their name to say, all right, now let's turn it on. But again, anything can happen. It's a cliche that I hate to say, but literally anything can happen. Here they have a matchup against the Cardinals. I'm not sure yet who's going to be playing for the Cardinals. They beat them. Did they beat the Cardinals 2 weeks ago, or did the Cardinals beat them?
The Cardinals won, I think. I'm gonna have to look that up, Jude. I'm not sure about the answer to that. It's so funny because we talked about it endlessly the week that it happened.
You got it happen, yeah.
Yeah, I'll have it up in a second. But Cardinals schedule. Here we go. So yes, Cardinals Rams. So that's the new one. Okay, we go back. Hey, everybody, enjoy me going through the internet while we're online. How awesome is that? No, the Rams won 30-23 on December.
All right. I think the Rams won both. The Rams swept them for the season series.
Yeah.
Okay. So, they've got that going for them. So, again, if this is the Cardinals team that we've been seeing the last 5 weeks, then this is their chance to kind of springboard themselves again and say, you know what, let's take this win and build on it and make it happen for another 5 games or whatever the case may be. But if the Cardinals get all their pieces, I don't mean to get too far into like looking ahead at the wild card round, but if the Cardinals get their pieces, then, it might be trouble for the Rams. So
yeah,
really it's just a team that I can't say with any certainty which version of them is going to show up. So it's like that just puts them as a huge question mark for me in these playoffs. Like I can't all season I rode with them and said, these are serious playoff contenders, but I've got to get off that. I got to get off that wagon at this point.
Yeah. And the first round in particular, wild card round, I think is matchups. Matchups are huge. Who you get based on what their strengths and weaknesses are and what your strengths and weaknesses are will make a big difference. We'll get to that in a second. But first, let's talk about the AFC for a second. Oh my God. Of course, when Indianapolis lost, what that meant was that for Baltimore and Pittsburgh, that essentially became a playoff game. That if Baltimore won, they'd be in position to, possibly take the last spot. And if the Steelers won, they would clearly be in position to get the last spot. Either of those outcomes was unfathomable even a couple of weeks ago because neither one of them played very well 3 weeks ago, but I felt like the Steelers-Ravens game was very appropriate had it been the last game of Ben Roethlisberger's career because it sort of epitomized his career. It's, not pretty, but we found a way to win. So the thing is,
let's not forget, the how much the possibility of a tie just loomed over that entire game. And if not for you already knowing and having it in your mind, the broadcast team for NBC certainly reminded you.
Yeah.
Several times throughout the night. If it's
so last week in this space, I said, imagine if Indianapolis, Jacksonville wins and the Steelers or Ravens win, and then the only thing that can't happen is this tie. Imagine if that game is close late and it goes to overtime. What a mess it's going to be, Jude. It was a total mess. It was a shit show. I mean, they played so differently in overtime than they would have, I think, under normal circumstances where it was a win or get in kind of scenario. And it really came back to bite the Chargers, and it nearly came back to bite the Steelers. If basically the Raiders had the Steelers season in their hands, they could have said, screw it, we're not taking a chance. We're going to take a knee and we're going to go play Kansas City. But I think it was the fear of Kansas City that led the Raiders to do what they did. Very crazy ending.
So. I don't think so. Looking at that game, looking at some of the players in the post game on the field talking to each other, a lot of speculation over what was said, but it looked like one of the Chargers players, one of the Raiders players talking to Austin Eckler said, we were just going to tie it. But I think that rookie head coach throughout the season, he's made some questionable calls. And everyone who knows anything about football, it looked like the Raiders were just content to let the clock run out and call it a game, right? But he calls the timeout, and you're just sitting there like, why?
Well, he called it. I mean, in fairness, he didn't call the timeout with 40 seconds to go on the play clock. He called the timeout with 2 seconds or 1 second on the play clock, meaning it wasn't.
Why?
Yeah, well, he claimed it was because they had the wrong defense on the field for a run play. Like he realized that what they were going to try to do was run it. Worse yet, Jude, apparently they only put 10 players on the field when they're after the timeout. So, yeah, it's a total breakdown of coaching. But, yeah, no doubt, if he doesn't call the timeout, that's what I'm saying. If he doesn't call the timeout, I think the Raiders might have done that. But they did have a conversation on their sideline about, is it worth the risk to avoid Kansas City in the first round? Because I do think that those two teams know Kansas City really well. I don't think either one of them was eager to go to Kansas City in the wild card round. So,
but at the same time, you just know this is a division team, and those games are always so unpredictable. Just look at Colts Jaguars. You just can't say, well, they beat us so many times.
Yeah,
we don't want to face them again and possibly lose to them again. You say, well, we faced these guys 2 times already. We can really put together a game plan and, take advantage of their weaknesses that we've seen, take things that we've seen in these past 2 games that we've experienced and take advantage of it. I'm not buying that you're really trying to avoid one team because now you're just going to go to another team who could possibly beat you worse than Kansas City was going to beat you.
Well, as I said, I don't think the Raiders would have kicked a 60-yard. I don't think they would have attempted a 60-yard field goal except for maybe on the last second or something like that. Like, I don't think they were, if the Rams had continued to call their timeouts, there's no way the Raiders attempt a 60-yard field goal. There's not going to do it. So because the risk is there's no reward, but the fact that they got into field goal range with that play probably changed their mindset as much as the timeout did.
I mean, even looking at it, like before they call that timeout, it didn't look like the Raiders were really even lining up to run a play.
They were lined up. Carr was in the shotgun. He was calling signals. It wasn't
like a sense of. It was no sense of
that part of it.
Urgency.
No. They wanted to use up the first thing. Use up the time. Secondly, get into field goal position. So use up the time was definitely first.
But it's like you weren't going to run anything crazy. You know they're going to run the ball. So it's like. Whatever. We'll never know what they were going to do.
But I'm telling you, man.
What the truth was. I just feel like if they didn't call that timeout, I really feel like they would have tied that game. Chargers would be in the playoffs right now.
I sure thought so. I mean, I thought that's where it was heading. But let me tell you a quick story. You know who Victor Hugo is, right? Yeah, the author. Wrote Les Miserables, Hunchback of Notre Dame, etc.
Okay, yeah.
He had a conversation with his publisher once that was about that the suspense you already know what's going to happen in every book, so there's no reason to write suspense novels that keep you guessing until the end. And Hugo said okay, and he wrote a book and he made it so that if you don't know the last word in the book, you don't know what happens. And he sent the whole manuscript to his publisher without the last word. And he waited for the guy to be like, you have to tell me what happened. And that was this game for me watching. I was just like, I think I know where this is going, but oh my God, I have no idea. And even when they lined up to kick the field goal and the ball was in the air, it's like, you don't know. Is it going to get there? Is it going to be wide? Because every field goal in that game had like made it by like an inch.
Yeah.
For me, I have to hats off to the NFL for all the criticisms I give them. The season literally came down to the last second of the last game of the weekend. And I give them props for that because it kept my attention. And everybody I knew who was not a Steelers fan was texting me going, what are you doing right now? This is going to end in a tie. Oh my God. So
I had you on like on my phone, just texting away like, man, this must be hell for you right now. Like,
yeah,
it was an unbelievable game, unbelievable ending. Nonetheless, rookie coach made rookie mistakes. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Chargers, again, you're the more talented team. And
seems like it, although their defense, to be fair, their defense needs work. Can't stop the run. And that at crucial parts of every game that they lost this year was a big factor. So
maybe it's just the Chargers curse because it's a couple of years in a row now where this year, maybe not the most talented team in the league, but I'm just remembering back to when they had Phillip Rivers and LT and Sean Merriman and all those guys. This goes
back to, old guy. This goes back to Dan Fouts, man. This goes back to when Marty Schottenheimer was there. This goes back, if the history of their whole franchise is
just clearly being one of the more talented teams in the league and never doing anything with it. I mean, this was unbelievable.
Early starters and faders. That's or slow start and they can't catch up, or who knows?
They've been a dumpster fire because they weren't that terrible, but they weren't that good either.
That's right.
They've been an underachieving team since the very beginning of the season, and you know what? You've got a franchise quarterback. Justin Herbert is going to be great in this league.
He was fantastic in that game. We can't let it go without saying Justin Herbert was unbelievable in that game. His fourth down play alone.
That last drive was unbelievable. Fourth and 15 and 4th and 13, and they get it every time. I'm like, man, when this guy gets all the pieces together, because he's still got a few things that he doesn't quite have down pat yet. When it all comes together for him, this is going to be a scary quarterback in this league. Hopefully they've got the right coaches around him. No shots to the current coach, but listen, you made too many rookie mistakes. I feel like a lot of them might have cost your team a game or two, and that looks to be the difference between you being in and out the playoffs.
Could be.
But nonetheless, the future
tough
is bright
division
at the very least.
Yeah.
Tough division. Yeah. But again, future is bright. I know it's one of those things you don't want to hear because it's like, what does that mean for us right now? But, we got next year to look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the second season is upon us, Jude. We have a super wild card weekend with six games, right? It's kind of like
a Sunday night playoff game. Not Sunday night, Monday night.
A Monday night playoff game. Yeah, exactly. I felt that they, as always, they gear these scheduling. You could almost predict what the schedule is going to be as soon as you know what the matchups are because they do it based on popularity, not necessarily on like which team played on last, on a short week or whatever. Like, a team played an overtime playoff game and then they got to go on Sunday night and they have to go back and play on Saturday, So it could be better scheduling for some of the teams that will have short weeks, but some interesting matchups for sure. It's always interesting in the postseason, but in light of what I said earlier about matchups, let's start with the first game of the weekend. Sorry, excuse me. The Raiders, the aforementioned Raiders, coming off a late, crazy Sunday night game down to the last second, travel to Cincinnati and play against the Bengals. The Bengals are a team that during this regular season at times looked like they are a part of the conversation for Super Bowl favorites. The Raiders seem like they should be happy to be there and maybe an early exit. How do you see this game working out? 6.5-point favorites the Bengals are right now.
Super Bowl favorites. I hope, and I'm pretty sure that it didn't, but I hope those words never came out of my mouth as far as the Bengals are concerned. The Bengals themselves are a team where it's like they should be happy to be here. Again, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Nobody expected this much success this early for the Joe Burrow-led Cincinnati Bengals. And you know what? You got to be happy for them. This is a team that many people thought, it would take 2, 3, 4 years for a rebuild, but it really just was one bad season and then another bad season, but Burrow got hurt very early and they were still scrappy. And then 3 years later, now this is a winning ball club with a shot at the Super Bowl. I mean, everyone's got a shot at this point, but I don't know how good those chances are. As far as against the Raiders, I really like their chances. The Raiders are not the same story as far as like nobody expected them, as far as like them having a real shot. Nobody expected them to be here. That part is the same, but they found a way to win games where they shouldn't. But the things with the Raiders that I feel more so than the Bengals is like, here's this 1 week, they'll win the game that nobody thought they'll win. And then next week, it's a game where they've got a fair shot and they just lay an egg and it's unbelievable for them. And it's kind of like the deck is stacked against them. Like you mentioned already, they've got a shorter week playing that Sunday night game, and now they've got this Saturday afternoon game. They're going to be on the road going to Cincinnati to play this game. And it's another situation. They overcame the last one where they were a less talented team, and here it is again. I don't know if it's as drastic as with the Chargers because the Chargers really have some star pieces up and down their roster, but the Bengals have a lot of great players as well. Joe Burrow is kind of making himself a great player. Jamar Chase, a rookie, but at the same time showing that he's going to be one of the better receivers in the league, breaking rookie records left and right. And then the trio of receivers is really good with Boyd and with Higgins. So it's like you've got some headaches on that offense for them. I didn't even mention Joe Mixon, who didn't play in this last game for them. Like they got to rest their guys, and they're going to come into this game well rested, refreshed, and they're going to give the Raiders everything they've got. If you think they'll come out flat, I don't expect that at all. They have a playoff hiatus. They're finally back in this second season, and they're going to look to, show everyone that, hey, we're not just here because we won the division and we're just happy to make the playoffs. We're going to make a serious run at it. So I think the deck is stacked against the Raiders right now because they're also dealing with, a slew of injuries with their secondary and things of that nature too. They got Darren Waller back, but it looks like, the conditioning isn't quite there. He wasn't really a big factor in that last game. Don't know if 2 weeks back will be enough time to get him back to that elite tight end level. But, it's I say that to say they don't have that lead dog to throw the ball to. Josh Jacobs, a really good running back, but, his best season looked like it was his rookie season, and he hasn't quite lived up to that since then. So it's really just Derek Carr making the best with what he's got as opposed to the Cincinnati Bengals, where it's Joe Burrow throwing to a slew of great receivers, and when he's not throwing the ball, he can turn around and hand it off to a really good running back. So I think this is the Bengals' chance to really come in here and say, hey, we're going to make some noise. This is our house. We're going to win this playoff game after we've been missing from the playoffs for the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, I don't expect the Bengals to be flat. I do think there are some factors in this game with the matchup. Talked about matchup being potentially an issue for Cincinnati enough that it might be a close game. One is the weakness of Cincinnati's team, I think anybody would say, are their offensive tackles right now. And the strength of the Raiders defense is basically if their edge guys can get to you you are going to have trouble passing the ball. If they can't get to you, you're going to.
Crosby is a scary guy. Yeah.
Yeah. And they, as a team, they're middle of the pack for sacks, but they have the ability to exploit matchups. That's the thing about the Raiders pass rush. So like I said, if you're a real stout pass protection team and you get the ball out quickly, no problem. But with Burrow, I think their tendency as an offense is to want to push the ball downfield to those three great receivers you mentioned. That might be something that is limited by what the Raiders are good at, right? So there's that. The second thing is this entire game is in the context of a cold weather game. I don't have any idea about the wind or anything like that. I don't think it's supposed to snow or rain, but it's supposed to be in the mid 20s to 30 degrees when this game is played. You got a dome team facing a team with where their star players are sort of guys from the South, with the exception of Burrow. So I feel like it's, you never know with these kinds of things. It's like sometimes guys you don't expect to be good.
They've played in these elements.
Yeah, but not so much. I mean, it hasn't been this cold in the East Coast for the last couple of weeks, right? I think here's what I think. It's not 100% that guys who grow up in the Northeast are better in winter games, because some guys will really surprise you and be excellent winter weather players that you think there's no chance they're soft, whatever. And then other guys are just like, it makes a huge difference. They look like completely different players. So that's always a factor. But the sneaky thing is the Raiders special teams. I think the best special teams advantage in this game is the kind of thing where if it's a close game, if the pass rush of the Raiders can keep it close, and like you said, Darren Waller has to play better than he did last week. But if they can keep it close, special teams can make a really big difference in a close game. So I think the Bengals should win this game and probably will win this game. And might even win it, might win it easily. But I think the elements are there for at least a close game for the Raiders. And, the playoff games tend to be tighter anyway, because they're more conservative about what teams are more conservative about what they do. So, 6.5 points, I think, is a lot of points for Cincinnati in a cold weather playoff game. Yes, Raiders defense isn't all that. But like I said, Max Crosby is going to be a problem for them that they're going to have to scheme around.
For sure. Yannick Ngakoue too, definitely got to mention him. They make a really good pass rushing tandem. But I don't know. I think the Bengals just have way too much firepower for them. And yes, they do like to push the ball, but their screen game is very good as well, as far as getting the ball out to Joe Mixon or even throwing the screen to
Higgins.
To Chase, yes, Jamar Chase. He's just as good as taking the ball and doing all the work for Joe Burrow and, making a couple guys miss, taking it up the sideline for 50 and 60. So I really do think that the Bengals are going to make a statement in this game.
Yeah, I expect Mixon to have a bigger game than the wide receivers. And I expect on the other side, Hunter Renfrow to have a bigger game than I do Waller. That matchup with Hilton, they played a few times and it's always gone kind of a little bit, they each win their battles, but I think Renfrow is better in that matchup. And I feel like that's where the ball is they're going to try to get the ball to Renfrow. And so, red zone, short yardage situations, they could be tough. But can they keep Cincinnati close enough for that stuff to matter?
Just to play devil's advocate, the Raiders don't exactly play in, the North Pole or anything like that either.
No, that's what I'm saying. They're a dome team. You have a dome team against, a Northeast team. At least Cincinnati can practice in this weather, right? So that's not a small thing. Is there something about this?
Definitely. Listen, I don't know. I'm sure you've experienced it, but, pads on, getting hit over and over and over. 20-degree weather, the wind chill makes it feel like less than that. It's a sucky feeling, and a lot of times you may not really be hurt, but you'll certainly feel hurt once you do that. You got to be
you have to be a little deranged to be a cold weather NFL player. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be just sort of like the hits inspire you. They're like, yeah, give it to me. Like, I want to hit me in the head, like, I think you got to be that guy. So perhaps the more, pretty, guys who like the domes and the pretty fields. It's not for them all the time, for sure. It's no small thing. I'm not saying they're soft. I'm saying it's like, nobody really wants to get hit in that weather. That's for sure. Patriots at the Bills again. This is the third matchup. In a way, I have to feel like the NFL is probably thrilled to get Patriots Bills number 3 because they've had some interesting games this year. The last time in Buffalo, that's the game that New England threw the ball, whatever it was, 4 times.
4 times, yeah.
Would you be surprised if the Patriots come out throwing it 50 times?
I would be surprised. I don't think they're ready and willing to put a game of this magnitude squarely on the shoulders of their young rookie quarterback. I mean, a promising season, a great season, but throw the ball 50 times. I'm not seeing that happening. It'll be a healthy dash of run and pass. It'll be a regular scripted game unless all of a sudden, it's going to be snowing and super windy again in Buffalo, which, isn't completely out of the question. Never say never.
No snow. No, by the way, no snow expected, but single digits temperature without not even concluding the wind chill.
Right. With that being said, I think if it weren't for it being so cold, I may have said, this is definitely the Bills' game to win. A team that's been there before, the better quarterback at this point in time. I would even argue to say just as good, if not better, defense than what the Patriots have. But if it's all about single-digit weather and who's going to be able to run the ball more, I like the Patriots a lot more, maybe even possibly to pull an upset off, because I just feel like, they definitely run the ball better than what the Bills are doing. That being said, the last 5 weeks of the season, Devin Singletary has been one of the better backs in the league, unbelievably. But I don't know if it's enough because, he's been one of the better backs, meaning he's rushing for more, but that's better in terms of fantasy, where it's he's catching the ball and all those other things factored into it. As far as purely running the ball, I don't know that they can keep up with the Patriots running game. Patriots have Damian Harris, they have Ramondre Stevenson, and then they have a slew of other guys that they'll throw in there to mix things up. So I don't know if it's coming down to one of those super cold games where you just want to really impose your will on them. I like the Patriots a lot more than I like the Bills. That being said, the Bills, as far as throwing the ball, I like their receiving crew more. I like the quarterback more. I like the ability of their quarterback to make plays with his legs and with his arm. But once it's colder, it is harder to catch that ball as well. And we saw that in that last game. Dawson Knox with some drops. Stephon Diggs, who almost never drops the ball, with a couple drops. So it's going to be an interesting game. I think this will be a much closer game than I would have anticipated, all things neutral as far as weather and playing site and things of that nature. But I definitely don't expect that, the Patriots will be either throwing it 3 times or throwing it 50 times. It's going to be a much more balanced game plan. But it's going to be a tight one. That is what I can see. Bills, a little bit more talented. They're at home. They're more used to the elements. I think they'll squeak out of here with a win. Don't be surprised, though, if, Patriots pull off an upset. Bill Belichick is good for that.
Yeah, I feel like it's tortoise in the hare. The Bills, flashier, more talent, but they're just up and down. They're too up and down. The Patriots are very steady, and I think until they play a team that is not only steady but more talented, they're going to keep going. The rookie quarterback in the playoffs scares me a little. The track record with rookies in the playoffs, not so good. But I think the matchup favors the Patriots in this game. The Bills are likely to get sucked into a running style game, which I don't think really helps them. So you get this, quarterback who's, I feel like Josh Allen, one thing about him is if he is a big part of the game plan and he gets in a rhythm, both running and throwing it, that you get better games out of him. If he's a little bit, asked to be distributing the ball, but not necessarily pushing it downfield or running it himself a lot, I don't think he gets in the flow of the game the same way. Like he's one of those guys, I think it needs to take a hit, needs to toss it downfield, make a big play to get rolling. I like the Patriots in this game, especially to cover and maybe to squeak out a win. It's going to be an entertaining game. Eagles at Tampa Bay Buccaneers. With all apologies to the Steelers, I'm not sure the Eagles aren't the worst team in the playoffs. They're playing Tampa Bay, who has been on a bit of a roller coaster lately. Haven't played the way that we expected them to, or that they did earlier in the year. Do the Eagles have enough to stay in this game against Tampa Bay?
No chance. I'm sorry. The Eagles will be helped because, obviously this is the Buccaneers of last year. defense is the same. The offense most certainly isn't the same. You don't have Antonio Brown, obviously. You don't have Chris Godwin due to injury. So right now they can really just key in on Mike Evans, force Brady to throw it to some of the other guys, the Brashad Perrimans, the Scotty Millers. Running game-wise, I'm not sure if Leonard Fournette is going to be playing at this point. If he does, obviously it's going to be better for the Buccaneers. But, Ronald Jones hasn't quite filled in his shoes in the last couple of games, so that running game hasn't been there for the Buccaneers. So if the Eagles were to play their best game, I think even with all those things considered, they'll keep it close, but I just can't see a situation in which Tom Brady is leading a team at home into the playoffs and they lose to the Eagles. I mean, let's look at the Eagles, what they've done all season. Sometimes they're a competent team and they do really well. Sometimes they're just a terrible team and they give up 50 points in the last game of the season to the Cowboys. As good as the Cowboys are, however you want to assess that, you don't want to give up 50 points in the last game heading into the playoffs. It's like, you just don't want to do that. Defensively, they're not a solid defense. They're more of a middle of the pack defense. So the Buccaneers will find some success there. Offensively, I'm still not convinced on Jalen Hurns as a pocket quarterback. He's best when he's running the ball. He's best when he's rolling out and finding guys downfield. But the receiving crew just isn't the best, and he is not the best passer. So it's not like it's a bunch of great passes from Hurns that his receivers just aren't doing anything with. It's, a mixture of him making bad throws and the receivers dropping the passes that actually do get there. So it's going to be a lot of Devonta Smith. I don't think they've been using him enough this season, if anything, but they need to feed him as much as possible, as well as Dallas Goedert. Will they have Miles Sanders back? That's another question, because, you need all the weapons you can have, and he's a weapon for them. Unlike the Buccaneers with Ronald Jones, at least the running back tandem they've used with Boston Scott and Jordan Howard, they filled in pretty well for Miles Sanders. But at the end of the day, you do want Miles Sanders to be in there because he's more of a guy that can be a 3-down back where he can catch the ball, run the ball, and just kind of makes it mysterious as far as what's going to be in there, as opposed to it being Josh Howard. They're going to run the ball. Boston Scott, they might run the ball, but more than likely they're going to pass the ball. So I just don't see it. I can't fathom the Eagles coming out and just really upsetting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Say what you want about Tom Brady, but I can't see him losing in the first round of the playoffs. I don't think that's ever happened in his career. I don't see why it would happen.
He lost in the first round to
in the
Denver.
wild card round?
Yeah, in Denver when he was playing for New England, I believe. Yeah, but that's maybe the only time. I think it's a Tampa Bay needs to forget about their formula that they used in the playoffs last year, because they're missing Leonard Fournette, they're missing Chris Godwin for the rest of the year. So I think they've got to sort of retool, and Antonio Brown. All three of those were contributors in the postseason last year.
Sure, yeah.
So I think they have to kind of think to themselves, okay, forget about what we did last year exactly, and let's figure out with the guys that we have what's the best way to win. And some elements are the same. Brady and Gronk are still there. Levante David apparently coming back from his foot injury. He's playing. So yeah, they're on defense, they're pretty much the same defense they were. On offense, they'll figure it out. And playing Philadelphia gives them sort of a week to work out the bugs. So I feel like they're going to show you a little bit about their new plan, and that will probably involve a heavy dose of Mike Evans, that more than we've seen. And Cameron Brate will get a role that's a little bit expanded, and they'll run the ball just enough and beat the Eagles and see if they can wind it up for another playoff run. It's tough. It's tough to go back to back because things happen and you don't have the same energy you did the first time. And they're not as healthy as they were the first time. So we'll see how that goes. But I like the Tampa Bay to easily to win this game and to cover actually the 8-5. 49ers at Cowboys. Cowboys are sort of playing hotter towards the end of the year. The 49ers, though, are that team. They're sneaky. They're tough out. What do you see in this matchup?
Cowboys 2 out of the last 3 games in the regular season, putting up 50 burgers against the Eagles and against the Washington football team. I was about to say the other name.
Yes, you were.
But I mean, that's great for the Cowboys. Is it going to happen here against the 49ers? I really don't think so. I think Cowboys is still favored because at the end of the day, you just look at that lineup. You just look at Ezekiel Elliott, Dak Prescott, Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, and you say, man, they've still got a ton of good guys. And that's with Michael Gallup suffering a torn ACL. Unfortunately, he's done for the season. But they just find other receivers to plug in there. Cecil Wilson comes in, and he has a hell of a game last week with 2 touchdowns. So it's like offensively, the pieces are definitely there to challenge the 49ers secondary, throwing the ball downfield. Tony Pollard, a guy that I've mentioned before, I love him in his role, spelling Ezekiel Elliott, and at times he's just more effective than Ezekiel Elliott. But even Ezekiel Elliott, kind of a little bit, not so much, but starting to get a little bit better. I don't know how much that knee injury is behind him, but if he continues to get better and he kind of goes back to the Ezekiel that he was in his early years, then this is a Cowboys offense that's going to be full throttle and hard for any team to stop. Hopefully that's, if you're a Cowboys fan, hopefully that's the case. And, there's real validity in the Cowboys to the Super Bowl chance that you hear. But, they say that every year, regardless how good or bad their team is. On the other side, you got the 49ers. This is the more scrappy, the more determined, the more we're going to find a way to get it done team. And, I like them offensively against this Cowboys defense. Cowboys were taking advantage of some bad teams, putting up numbers and putting up stats that, made them look like a top-tier defense, but as soon as you place them against a worthy adversary, then, it comes back down to earth, and, they're not scoring on defense as much. They're not getting the sacks as much. They're not getting the turnovers as much. So the 49ers aren't going to put up crazy points on you, but the way they run the ball is really something you have to tip your hat off to, because, that's what they want to do, and they still find a way to get it done. They got Elijah Mitchell. The rookie has done a heck of a job. After 1, 2, 3, was it 4? 3, at the very least, 3 running backs ahead of him. He fills in, and he does a heck of a job with the starting position.
I seem to recall somebody who had them as their draft sleeper at running back on this show. Who would that be, Jude? Yeah. Just wanted.
Well, it wasn't me. I'll say that.
Yeah, I feel like he's a really good fit for what they do too. That good burst through the hole, and that's the thing. Their offensive line, maybe not built to sustain blocks for a long time, but if you can find the hole and get through it quickly, they make a lot of hay out of that. Sorry, I didn't mean to So the ending was, you think that Dallas is it's a good matchup, but who do you think is going to win?
I think it's a good matchup. I think it's another. This is what the NFL wants. I would assume, but it's another close game where it's going to come down to the wire and which team can step up and make the most plays when it matters most.
And that will be the Cowboys. They've just got a little bit too much star power, too much weapons on offense that you can't shut all of them down. And even when you shut down their main guys, they've shown that they're more than willing to throw it to the secondary guys that nobody's really thinking about. And those guys have gone on to show that we can make the plays when called upon. Look at Dalton Schultz for most of the season, not really a name that most people knew. But down the stretch, when they're trying to take away those top 2 receivers, he's been a guy that Dak has, thrown the ball to a ton, and he's turned it into first downs and touchdowns. So I think they'll keep on with that trend. Yeah, we'll let you take away Amari Cooper, take away CeeDee Lamb. We'll be more than happy to throw to our other guys. And then when you start playing honest defense and you're not doubling these guys, that's when we'll throw those home run balls to CeeDee and Amari and really make you pay. Yeah, let me ask you a question. There's a way of answering who I think will win. Which team has more talent, the Los Angeles Rams or the Dallas Cowboys? Because here's what I would say. You see that it's just an offshoot of the same discussion that we had before, that the Dallas, I think, has less talent than the Rams do. And yet the 49ers look like the team that was way more prepared to win that game. And I have a feeling this might be another example of that this week. Dallas is very flashy against the pass, but it's not really, San Francisco's game is not to throw the ball downfield and challenge your corners and whatever. They're going to throw it to Juszczyk, and they're going to throw it to their Kittle, and they're going to hand the ball off to Deebo Samuel, and they're going to do a bunch of stuff that is different than what most NFL offenses do. I'm not sure that Dallas is they're more set to beat a team that has a couple of good wide receivers, and they'll take them away from you and they'll send Micah Parsons. But they're not going to be able to rush Micah Parsons as much because he's going to have to be more responsible in coverage. I would say of the three parts of his game, stopping the run, rushing the passer, and coverage, he's pretty good in coverage, but that is the weakest part of his game, and I think he'll be challenged in this game in that respect. 49ers are really good at that part of the game. So they'll make him be honest. They have these two-way players in Juszczyk and Kittle and Debo that are really effective both running or passing it. So they'll be a little less predictable than your average NFL offense. I think the Cowboys have a lot of talent, but they're missing that little thing that makes you cohesive in the postseason compared to San Francisco. I love their quarterback. I love their wide receivers for Dallas are amazing. They're still, even with missing one, they're still pretty dang good, kind of like Tampa Bay. But yeah, it's like I kind of feel like a sneaky pick would be the 49ers in this game.
I would want to say it, and I almost said it again. I said this will be a really close game that's going to come down to the wire. But the other thing is just Jimmy Garoppolo versus Dak Prescott. I mean, they're going to run the ball.
Should be a mismatch. Jimmy Garoppolo versus Matt Stafford should be a mismatch too. It wasn't.
It should be, but I don't think that the Cowboys will put themselves in position to kind of open this game up to the 49ers like the Rams did. Like the Rams came out and they were firing 17-0 early lead, and then they just kind of took their foot off the gas pedal a little bit, let the 49ers get back into the game. I don't think it's the same situation where it's like, okay, maybe we can, kind of relax a little bit, maybe possibly take some of our guys out, rest them up for next week. That could have been a thought for the 49ers, Sure. Not the 49ers, for the Rams last week. I don't think the Cowboys are thinking that at all. So I don't think that they're going to take this 49ers team lightly in any sort of way, especially looking at how they beat those Rams to get into the playoffs. I think they're going to say, hey, they're going to run the ball. And I'm not saying it's easy to stop a team that runs the ball first, but it's easier than stopping a team that's pass heavy, right? So I think they're going to be very dedicated to stopping Debo when he's in the backfield. That's going to be a major key. He might be an X factor in this game because him and the ball, regardless how you get him the ball, your team is likely to get a good amount of yards or score. So I think they're going to key in on him and just really focus on stopping the run game. If you put that game and rest it upon Jimmy Garoppolo's shoulders and say, Jimmy, you've got to be the one to go out there and beat us. I really like the Dallas Cowboys. I don't think they stopped that run game completely, though. And that's why it's going to be a close game, and it'll come down to the wire.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said, and I don't have the greatest degree of confidence, but it just sort of, like I said, my feel is San Francisco will take this to the wire and probably be a little bit better when the game is on the line.
For sure, yeah. It's definitely possible, yeah.
They just seem to have that sort of playoff vibe about them, which I appreciate. Kansas City and Pittsburgh, obviously the biggest. I think this is the biggest point spread, even where it landed. It started at 15, it went down to 10.5. It's now back up to 12.5. At 12.5, it's still the biggest point spread in the history of the WildCard round. So it's not like people expect anything other than a Kansas City victory. And I mean, that's totally logical. As they just played a few weeks ago and Kansas City blew them out. Wasn't close. There were a couple of things about that game. TJ Watt was not healthy and played less than half the game. And also I think it was probably the Steelers had kind of been on a run where they had played some better games, and it's just sort of like felt like a game where they came out flat. I don't expect them to be that flat. But I will say this. I expect Kansas City to win this game. However, there are some sort of upsetty vibes about this. I'll take you back. I'm old school, right? The most money I think I ever won on a bet was betting that the Jacksonville Jaguars would go in to the powerhouse Denver Broncos at that time of the mid-90s, who were expected to go to the Super Bowl, and stole a playoff game from them. I think that might have been 96. It was the year before Denver won their 2 Super Bowls in a row. And Jacksonville just had that feel of like this scrappy team, with this quarterback who wasn't the best, but he was clutch. And a couple of, like one receiver in particular, Jimmy Smith, who was just having a, uncoverable kind of season. And the Denver Broncos just felt like a team that were a little bit lax to get started in that game, and they just never had a chance to catch up to Jacksonville's energy that they brought at the beginning. So only thing I'll say is, if in the first 5-10 real-time minutes of this game, you see a lackluster Pittsburgh Steelers team, if they don't look like they're playing, that they're challenging the Chiefs, okay, you're going to have to play at this level to beat us. If you'll know in the first 5 minutes. It's not a game where they're going to let Kansas City get off to a lead, and then like San Francisco, they're going to come back from a deficit. That stuff's not happening. But if you see it at sort of an energy and a play intensity level that's higher than what Kansas City, it's like, hey, it's playoff football, and we're going to play at this level. You have to come up to here to beat us. I think they have a shot. I really do. If I'm a bettor and I'm not a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, I just look at that line and I think, oh my God, like that makes me want to bet the line. So you can tell me I'm being a homer and so on and so forth, but I feel like they have a puncher's chance.
You are being a homer right now. A big old homer. Okay.
You're gonna give me this. You're gonna give me the Steelers in 12.5.
I can give you Steelers on 12.5. I can give you that.
What about 15? You give me 15?
Yeah, I'll give you Steelers on 15. But Steelers pulling off an upset, I can't see that happening, because outside of this particular game, you've got to think about the Chiefs, right? And where they've come from and where they're at now. Starting off the season, everybody's panicking and wondering what's happening when they're 2-3, 2-4, or something like that. And it's like, the Chiefs are broken this year, and they fix it, and they fix this defense, and they get all the way back to possibly getting that first round bye, coming within a game of it. Besides that, let's go back to what happened at the end of last season. If you think for a second the Chiefs aren't hungry to get back to the game after being embarrassed, because quite frankly, they took a beating on that national stage in the Super Bowl last year. If you think they're not hungry to get back there and make up for that stain on their record, then you are absolutely wrong, my friend. That being said, you also have to look at the Steelers, and you said a key thing there. If they come out there and they start fast, have they done that all season?
Buffalo, their first week one of the season.
Buffalo. And then every game since then, slow, get down several scores. All of a sudden, a flurry of scoring and changing things and throwing the ball and looking like a competent offense, but it's too little, too late much of those times. Yeah. And it's like, I can't say, they'll flip the switch and it won't be the case in this game. I think they'll come into the game script and like they've done in many other games this season. It won't work, but they'll try and stick to it for whatever reason, and it still won't work. But you're facing the Chiefs, who are hungry to get back to another Super Bowl, win another Super Bowl, and they're not going to take their foot off the gas. They're going to say, we're giving you everything we've got right here, right now.
Most likely you're correct about all of that. So, I mean, I'm not, you're preaching to the choir in terms of what probably will happen. But I will say this, 2005, the Steelers got killed by the Colts. Peyton Manning, unbeatable, playing at home in the Dome. I think the Colts at one point were up 26-0 in that game against the Steelers. Steelers offense in 2005 was pretty lame. Like they were not a team. Did the same thing, try to run the ball, give it to Bettis, stay close, win it at the end. They came against the Colts and they played against type. The Steelers came out at throwing that ball against the Colts in 2005, and the Colts seems to be surprised by that. So that's what I'm saying. It's like the opportunity is there for them. Do I think they will take it and run with it and finish it? No. But like the opportunity's there. I just don't think I guess I don't appreciate the fact that anybody is writing off a team that's in the playoffs, because, we saw a Seattle team that had a under 500 record win a home game that no one thought they deserved. We've seen some stuff in the playoffs, and the first round of the playoffs is when these teams that are powerhouse teams are the most susceptible. You get past the first round, then it's like, then you're making a playoff run. But there's the league is littered with first round losses from teams that should have beat their opponent.
Absolutely. I don't think this is going to be that. Choose pretty much any of the other games, but absolutely. And you know what? Even to your point, like, yes, they already beat them, blew them out earlier this season, 36-10.
Without Travis Kelce.
Without Travis Kelce. But even even the Chiefs know that doesn't really mean much in the grand scheme of things.
They should know that.
They blew up Tampa Bay.
That's right.
Tampa Bay gave them a spanking in the Super Bowl. So I don't think the Chiefs will come in there thinking like, yeah, we're going to take care of business because we already did this before. But the Steelers, for the Steelers to win, they'd have to be firing on all cylinders from the very beginning of this game.
Yeah,
not let up for a second. They live and
die with the intensity of their front seven on defense. It's like if they start the game with if the first thing that happens is a Chiefs possession and the Steelers defense looks surprisingly good against it, stopping them or slowing them down at least, then I feel like there might be some hope they might do it. But I believe it's one of those games where you'll know first 5 or 10 minutes of game action, you will know what's going to happen, and then you'll be able to write the script. Lastly, we talked already a little bit about Arizona and the Rams in their rematch of 2 regular season matchups. Is there a reason to think that Arizona can pull off the upset the third time around in this game?
Is DeAndre Hopkins going to play? If DeAndre Hopkins is playing, if Kyler Murray is able to get that same chemistry he had with them, and they look like an unstoppable combo, if that's able to free up Christian Kirk and A.J. Green, and they can become that whole offensive unit, then yes, absolutely, Arizona can have that chance. The other thing, too, is just tough, as crazy as it may seem, to lose to a team 3 times. It's kind of tough, especially when you yourself are a good team. I don't know why. I don't know why that is. You've already beat them twice, but beating them that third time, it's not just, line them up, set them up, and good to go. It's difficult because now they've said, we've tried this, it didn't work, tried this, it didn't work. We're going to try something different now, and hopefully that's what's going to be able to work. But I'm giving you a lot of ifs, and, I love to say it. If was a fifth, we'd all be drunk. That's a lot of ifs I just gave you. So the other thing is, they got Edmonds back, but now he was kind of hurt last week. They got Connor back last week, and he stepped in and he did his thing. If both of them are healthy, great 1-2 punch. If more ifs for you, if both of them are healthy, if they get DeAndre Hopkins back and they actually have a full team, if they get J.J. Watt back and he's back on defense and they can't key in on Chandler on the other side and they're able to let all their dogs go, then I might even favor Arizona in this game, But again, it's a lot of ifs. It's a lot of ifs. If that's not the case, then it's still muddy. It's not like if none of that happens, that Arizona has no chance. If none of that happens, then it's like, which version of this LA Rams team are we going to see? Are we going to see the team that has Cooper Kupp and throws to him as many times as they want because you just can't cover him? Are we going to see the team that, finds O.J. Beckham in the end zone because all of a sudden he's a second-tier guy and people aren't double covering him and he shows you that he can still get open? Or are we going to see this offense that kind of sputters out of control and drives don't quite get finished, and sometimes the running game is really good, sometimes the running game is really bad? It's like so many different versions of this Rams offense that I know Sean McVay must get so frustrated at him being an offensive-minded guy. It's like, why aren't we working? But ultimately, I think it's going to come down to Matthew Stafford. If Matthew Stafford throws 2 picks or more, then this is absolutely a game where they should lose. If Matthew Stafford throws 2 picks or more, they will lose this game. I'll go out there and say it because he's basically just going to give that ball to Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray, he hasn't played his best football as of late. I don't know if it's like he's never been back completely healthy from that ankle injury. I know ankle injuries come in all different kinds of severities. Sometimes they can last this long, and it's good enough to play on, but it's not good enough for you to be 100% of what you used to.
Yeah.
If that's the case, then you know what? I don't see no reason why Arizona can't win this game. But, a lot of question marks for them right now. Hopefully we get some more clarity as it goes on. But I can't say, yes, the Rams are going to go out there and stomp a hole into them. I don't see that happening in any of these scenarios. I think if Arizona have all their ducks lined up, then they can, go in there and really shock the Rams and really give them a hard time. I see that happening more than I see the Rams running up the score.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple of keys. I assume Hopkins plays because he strikes me as a guy that at 70 or 80% can still play his game a little bit, maybe not to the level that he's, we're accustomed to seeing, but he's not like a speed guy who has a bad hamstring. And you're just, if he can't run, you're not going to see the game. He's not going to play in the game. Right. But I think Hopkins will play to some level. But to me, the key is, can the Rams keep Kyler Murray contained in the pocket? If they trap him in there, they don't let him get loose out of the pocket to make plays downfield, or plays running football, then I feel like they have a pretty good chance to win this game, because I feel like Kyler Murray escaping and is when the plays happen for them. Either he gets it with his legs or he looking downfield and makes a clutch throw. So I think that's a big deal. Whether they'll be able to do that or not, I can't say. I suspect that Murray will get some chances to do that, and I believe in him enough to make plays, even with ups and downs with the way the season has gone. And to me, the other key is for Stafford, it's the interior pressure that's really the problem for him. He especially if his ankle is not 100%, any quarterback is bothered by interior pressure more than they are sometimes about edge rushers. If JJ Watt comes back and it is disruptive in the interior, changes the tenor of this game a lot from the last time that they played. So, I don't have a whole lot of faith in the Rams. Yeah, they're playing at home. They're playing for a chance to stay home for the playoffs like Tampa did last year. I mean, stay home for the Super Bowl and all that. But I'll go with I don't see them being the sum of their parts the way that other teams are. And I think the Cardinals a little bit of ball luck, and maybe they win this game. It's gotta suck for the Rams, man. The way you went all out and you just gave up everything as far as your future in exchange for trying to get everything as far as a Super Bowl now. Hey, Jude, how many times has a team assembled this all-star team in the offseason that doesn't have Tom Brady at quarterback and has done anything in the playoffs? When's the last time?
The one with the Tampa Bay, but yeah.
I'm saying that doesn't have Tom Brady at quarterback, which is probably the more important signing.
I'm saying that's the one time that it's ever happened with Tom.
I remember Philadelphia doing it one year, Cleveland a couple of years. The Rams have done it twice now. I just don't know that is a formula for winning in the postseason.
Yeah. It's really, that's a tough pill to swallow. But we're talking like they've already lost the game or something. Who's to say that it doesn't all work out in the end? It's just hard to say that it will work out in the end, given the product they've been bringing out the last couple of weeks. But
well, listen, Jude, we'll have different takes entirely after we see the first round of playoffs, because it's the overreaction weekend. It's kind of like week one of the regular season. After the first weekend, you're like, oh, this team's terrible. This one's way better than we thought. And that's what WildCard weekend will feel like. And then you'll get to the divisional round and reality will set in. So I'm just going to apologize for our overreactions in advance. But we should wrap it up. We've been here all day. Thanks for sticking with us. He's at Mr. TheeAllume, Mr. The Allume. The Mr. I'm so sorry. I suck. It's not like I've ever said your handle before. At the Mr. Allume, TheeMrAllume. See, I'll get you a hookup. Jude Allume on all the social media. I am at Accidental Zen. I occasionally have some Zen, but it's clearly by accident. I am Wil Masisak. He's Jude Allume. This is Old School New School Football. Hit the like button, subscribe, and we'll talk to you after Super Wildcard weekend. Jude, watch it.
Are you excited? I'm excited.
See my liver spots.